Mm. When you first realized, or subsequently, did you talk to your mother about it?
Realize what?
That the brothel business.
No, I didn't.
Mm.
It was just not a topic we would talk about.
Mm. Mm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, there was nothing to talk about.
It was not in your mind to bring it up to her and tell her, now I know what you're doing. Uh,
No,
right.
I didn't have that awareness to do
Mm.
that. Um, yeah, it just felt like it is what it is. There was nothing to talk about.
Mm.
I think it was more when she said she's leaving, and leaving the place for my good and all. Now that so it's like, imagine from never talking about the brothel to now we're leaving because we are getting older, and we don't want it's harder. We don't want people to know that you have this background. It's quite bizarre. But okay, great. We're leaving here. I can spend more time with my mom. But by then I was a teenager. Actually,
Mm.
spending more time together after that whole long sort of absence was probably not the easiest to get started on.
Yeah. Mm. I think maybe I just want to say something about the sense of shame, right? Kind of contextualize it a little bit. I myself know the sense of shame very strongly when I was a teenager in school. You know, I mean, nothing to do with the brothel business. But my dad was a coolie, right? When I was in primary school, the teachers will always ask, right, father's occupation, and then your classmates would always ask, and they were always curious about it. And I was very shameful about talking about it. You know that my father was illiterate and we were working class. Um, and it took me a long time to get to be able to get to terms with it. Only much later, when I was an adult, many years later, and it always makes me feel guilty about what I thought and what I felt about my parents. And this is important to talk about it because this is a Singapore story, right? The Singapore story has a mainstream story, which is about, uh, you know, going, becoming middle class, becoming owners of HDB flats, having a white collar job, professional job. And when you're outside of that, it's very hard for people to kind of reconcile with it or to even talk about it and admit it publicly, right? Or not necessarily publicly, like writing a book, but even to friends, right? I try to hide it from friends. I try to hide it as much as possible. Only years later, when I was middle class myself, then I was able to do it. So I think what we felt, yeah, so certainly part of it is because of the specifics, right? Like in your case, you were living in a red light area, and mother ran a brothel business, and you had that sense of shame. But I would say that a lot of us who grew up in the 70s and 80s in Singapore that was growing very fast and had a kind of trajectory towards what was desired, and you're outside that trajectory, shame is not far away often. Yeah, that's what I feel about it.
Yeah, and I can relate to that because
Mm,
even after, so the shame bit was okay, Keong Saik Red Light District. That was one part of it. But even afterwards, when I completely relate to what you're saying because my mother was not educated. So when she left Keong
mm,
Saik,
mm,
then she took on jobs as janitors, dishwasher, and
mm,
all, working class.
mm,
So that whole space was, yes, it is the Singapore story.
mm,
I mean, we can't talk about Singapore as though we all landed in this space and everyone is middle class.
mm,
That's so untrue. So indeed, and I did feel that. I mean, that the continuation of the shame that, yes, my mother is not like a teacher. Not many of us are, right, because some are actually more educated and they are, because there's a majority of us was not. So indeed
mm.
it was there. So I totally relate to what you're saying.
Yeah,
Even if you don't have a red light district in your childhood, you don't need that. But
yeah,
many of us, because we're working class, we yeah, because there is almost a certain standard gold standard they're supposed to work towards, and you are off that standard. That was a bit of the narrative, actually. I
mm,
think, in growing up, but that was the narrative. I mean, if you look at it in a very good light, is to propel you forward. But indeed, it has the it has the repercussions of causing a lot of shame.
yeah. It does alienate us, right? Isn't it? I wish I would have known you in those days. Actually we are not alone, right? There are
No, there are
quite a
many of,
number of
I think,
us.
yes.
Mm,
And it's also with all these years that passed that I think we can now talk about it and see it in this way. But growing up as a child, on your own and mostly on your own, every one of us had that, right? We were processing on our own,
mm,
and finding our own ways to almost even break out of it. Because I remember, I mean, one of the biggest things that in my head was 我要出人头地, you know, 出人头地, right?
mm, mm.
In Chinese, and it's like, how do I then break out and make it um against all odds? And I didn't know what it was, but I'm glad. I think I'm very, very lucky to have had the opportunities I've had. Going away
Yeah.
actually helped me to sort of not look at it just from that just a Singapore narrative. I was breaking away and doing things that people weren't doing at that time in '97. Someone mentioned to me recently, like, not many people were going overseas, and you just went there. And I said, yeah, I just wanted to try. So I think with all that, then that gave me a lot of different opportunities and exposure.
Yeah, Hong Kongers were leaving the country, remember?
Yes, interestingly, right? So, but for a Singapore girl with, who's, bilingual, because I speak Mandarin, so I had a lot of work opportunities in China.
Mm, mm,
And because I'm Cantonese, so I kind of like was, fish in the water, just assimilated quite easily. So it was fantastic.
mm,
Yeah, and very different from today, but it was actually opportunities that we need to grasp. But that also is like one full circle, right? Eventually, I realized that there was a void no matter what I did.
mm,
And it was because of, a lot of times I think we are hurt by unhealed memories. And that was when I realized, yeah, maybe there was something unhealed. I came back without realizing I had something unhealed. Then I realized it. And
mm,
so that's how the book happened.
mm. I'm gonna come back to that in a bit. Um, I know your mom is not very expressive. Did she talk about how did she feel when she left? She sold the brothel, right? And then she worked as a janitor and all that. Did she talk about that?
We didn't talk about it as in like we have conversations
Mm,
about it, but um, she expressed a lot about it
mm,
in terms of frustration. It was hard. It was hard.
mm,
Uh, she was, after all, even in a brothel environment, the operator's daughter. She became the operator. She
mm,
was still, whatever you want to call it, operating something. She was, in a way, the boss of a business. But suddenly, with all that taken away, all that familiarity,
mm,
um, she's just she's just a worker. She had workers, right? Last time she would have maybe sometimes another mate auntie that comes in and all, but now she is the worker herself.
mm,
To and she has to be out there to make a few $100 just for as a means of living. That's one. Of course, my dad also provided for us, but at that time, my dad was also not doing very well
mm,
in Hong Kong because he was ill. So hence also his early departure. Um but and he was not very well, and ill, so a lot of that burden fell on my mom. Um and luckily she only had got one child, but still
mm,
we need to live, right? We need to find a place to live, need to eat and all of that. So I think the stress and the real pressures of life was really on her, and
mm.
not having that, well, that so-called security of something familiar like the brothel.
Yeah, when she sold the brothel in 1983, was is that right?
Thereabouts, yeah.
You were pretty young, isn't it?
11.
11, yeah. I mean, she had what, at least 10, 15 more years to raise you and support you, right?
Yeah.
Mm,
So it was difficult. In fact, I think that was when I felt it was the toughest time.
mm,
Leaving Keong Saik, not in Keong Saik. In
mm,
Keong Saik, I think psychologically, emotionally, that might have been difficult as a child
mm,
and feeling neglect. But I think the subsequent years of leaving was the toughest because that was when it was very real. Mom had to go out to work, and hard work.
tell us about the circumstances leading to her selling the business.
I don't really know the
Mm,
full the like, circumstances leading into it, but I knew that the broader, sort of thought behind it was, I'm getting older, and people will have more questions, and if people knew where I came from, uh, it's no good for me. Okay, so that was a very big part of the narrative. But at the same time, I think it was also a time where Keong Saik was just not doing very well already. Business was bad. So that's against the backdrop of, hey, there's not much business and we're not generating much income. What's
mm,
the point of having this? And my daughter is growing old, getting older, and she's going to school. She's going to meet more people. Uh, maybe this should be it. I think that's how it happened.
right. Was it quite clear that the whole business wasn't doing well along the road?
It felt
Mm,
like that, yeah. I mean, like there were maybe more, I don't know, more checks, more authorities coming through.
mm,
Um, I don't have a very clear picture of all of that, but there was a sense I got that the times were getting harder, be it, more checks, more hoops you jump through, to even stay in operation, and then not a lot of customers. Yeah,
mm,
the
mm,
broader macro environment wasn't great for the red light district.
right. So you spent about 10 years uh, at Keong Saik Road, right?
I spent about 10, 11 years
Mm,
living
11
there.
years, right.
And then subsequently, for the next maybe 4 or 5, I was still, actually, no, I was still going there a lot because to see my nanny. And then maybe closer to when I was about 18, 19, I was still visiting her, but less. Yeah. So it was maybe all in all about 12 to 15 years of quite close contact.
Mm. What is your feeling about growing up there? Uh, was it a place that you felt was unsafe or unsavory? How did you feel about the place?
Never unsafe. I felt very safe there. I love the community spirit there.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Unsavory only when I started seeing some of those men, standing in front of my house. And the worst part was that they go and touch, like they'll touch my hair when you walk past, or like, oh, how are you? I mean, that was totally unnecessary. Now, on hindsight, when I think about it, I just felt, oh, these, you're very dirty, don't touch me, right? But now, on hindsight, I think that dirty is not because they're physically dirty, but I just felt violated.
Mm.
Because, hey, these are strangers. Why are you touching me? Even and then later on, when you put on that filter, and know that, oh, these are men that are just here oogling at girls, then it really felt, a sense of that whole violation felt a lot stronger. um but other than that, no, I think I had interesting childhood growing up. uh I mean, I get to go to the back gardens. I have fond memories growing up there, doing things that are not very typical. I mean, just like I wouldn't know what growing up i-
Mm.
in my growing up years in a HDB would be like. This was very different. I had a lot of to run around in that whole triangle of that three streets, just within that enclave. But yeah, so it's good memories when I think about it. You play badminton in a place where you just make out, a grass patch, and it's not a court. It's not a badminton court. You just go to the back gardens and do it. So these are lovely memories that I think, will forever stay with me. It's so not unsafe, because, like I said earlier, and I want to emphasize again, there was no solicitation. It
Mm.
wasn't like, the kind you watch in movies where people were, ladies were standing on the streets and it looked dodgy. It didn't
Mm.
feel like that at all.
Mm. Any memories of the police coming in?
No,
Mm.
I never police as in police uniform.
Mm.
So hence, as a child, you don't see police.
Mm.
But the term wolf dog long gao was a very big thing that my mom used. So as a kid, it's like long gao leila le fai di fan ho, like if I happen to be in the brothel. I mean, that was when I was a bit younger. It's like fai di zao la, you gotta go back, and then it would sort of like whisk me back to 15 8. And the term used is long gao, literally
Mm.
wolf dog, coming to sniff at things. And
Mm.
usually they are the authorities that are checking maybe the girls, whether they have, gone for the checks, the medical checks, whether there are underage ladies around. Yeah.
Yeah, the term is very interesting, right? I mean, there's no such thing as a wolf dog, right? Um,
Actually,
hmm.
I need to ask my mom, where did that come from? Maybe it's just a term to scare kids. But yeah, and this reminds me, I'm going to go ask her.
Yeah, I mean, the in Chinese culture, dog is not a good term. Wolf, I'm not sure, right?
But really, it's longao. As a kid, that was the term.
Right.
And the community spirit is such, is so
Mm,
lovely that in the early, I mean, in those days, right, when they start checking on some brothels, like in the beginning of the street, somehow the operator will call and they will inform the other people.
just like
So
hawkers, right?
yeah, it's great.
So talk about that a bit more, right? What was there probably was some competition going on, right, among the brothels. What was the overall relationship between the brothels?
I feel almost that, yes, definitely a competition, but I feel there's also an interdependency because
Hmm.
they all can't have all the girls in one place. They will all need to work with one another in order to, if a client comes and wants a certain girl that's not based in that brothel, they need to be, in good relation to call that girl. Because the brothels act like agents if the girls are attached to a particular brothel. So there's a lot of interdependence. Um, Competition only comes in the why a client will choose to go to 19 instead of 17,
Mm,
because it's decked out better. Then that one is sort of something you've got to kind of live with. If you don't have the money to invest, you don't want to invest, yeah, then you just can't. But there are competition. So the competition goes beyond just the business. You would see actually in the Hungry Ghost Festival, when the different brothel operators usually are the ones that sponsor a night of opera, or there are 3 nights, and then you see that one-upmanship where different brothel owners will just, I'm sponsoring this night, or I'm sponsoring 2 nights, or even down to what do you call those like flower wreaths, to give to the
right.
to reach to give to the performers. Instead of flowers, it's all notes, money. It's
Mm,
folded money. So it's like in Cantonese they call it 安吉牌, and it'll be like from this brothel owner. So that kind of competition you see, and I think it's the whole environment. Yeah.
so there was kind of a display going on, right, of the
Oh, for
the
sure.
wealth. I mean, who would go to the Hungry Ghosts? Would it be the
So
residents?
all the members, all
Mm,
the people living there, the
mm,
residents, you can be, sort of like mm, uh, a member. As long as you pay a membership fee, then you will get some tickets. You get, some incense or whatever. That's part of being a membership. And a lot of the Mazes would love it. That's when they get the tickets to watch the shows. Uh, yeah. So the operators are usually the larger sponsors,
mm,
and then residents are members, and it could be both residents in the brothels and outside of the brothels as well, the private
mm.
residences as well.
Right, right. Yeah, can you talk about that? The non-brothel residents and people who were living there or having their business there.
Non-brothel areas. So I think there's quite a lot of the business community there.
Mm,
They happen to live there because it's a shop house, so they might have their business there, and then they live at the back of the shop, or they may be the ones that actually have a second floor and they live on the second floor. There are two provision shops, one in the beginning of Keong Saik and one at the end. Uh, there's laundry, there's a dentist, there's two seamstress that I know, um, a Joss incense shop when I was living there. Of course, the coffee shops, they are operating at least two or three. Dong is one of them, but then there are
mm,
many others. Yeah, at least three actually coffee shops. Um, and number 15, the ground floor was a printing business,
mm.
sort of doing a bit of printing. Then there was a paper box factory,
Yeah.
a house that I go to a lot. Yeah, so many businesses. I mean, even within that little space.
Were there businesses that were kind of linked to the brothel business? Any of them linked?
No,
No.
I don't. Yeah, I mean, brothels are brothels. I don't know what. No, there are no.
Food,
What would?
were there any like famous food places?
Yes, yes.
Mm.
So I think one of the coffee shops that's quite popular, called Kok Sing, who today is still there somewhere on the street. The father is called Kao Gay. Uh, how they call him. I think his name is Kao, and then Kao Gay. That's how they call him. And he used to be the one that actually will fry up dishes and food. And you can order from him to be served at the entertainment houses. And then that's how the business took off, and then they now have a business there. The other one that was quite popular was in a little store in one of the coffee shops is Kaylay, the Rose, who's now no longer in that space. So these are popular ones.
Mm. Do you remember that, they had quite a number of customers and it was
Oh yeah,
busy?
they were busy. They were
Uh,
popular. Yeah.
mm. The street, was it busy the whole day or was it at night?
I think different at
Mm.
different hours of the day, it's different type of busy. The morning is actually very busy when people go into the market and sort of talking. So it's like residents are busy, right? And then they kind of congregate at a bit like at the Tonga, where they can then chat. It's sort of like the center portion of the of Keong Saik. Then I think from late afternoon, maybe 3 o'clock onwards, actually you get some people coming in already. The men are coming in.
Mm.
And probably the busiest is, I don't know, between like 8 to 9, 10, that kind of time in the evenings.
Mm.
But the whole day, I mean, people just go about their work. I mean, the bustling things, that happens in even the normal day hours where businesses go on. Yeah.
Mm. So would your mom be like kind of more free in the morning and early afternoon?
In the morning,
Mm.
and also at about dinner time, which is the time
Right.
when I get to spend that time with her, sitting opposite, sitting at the door latch of the temple.
Mm. That's quite a short window, right? That's like what,
Very short. It's about
5 to 7.
5:30 to 7. Yeah, six
Right.
to seven.
Okay. And what time would she end the day? Close.
About 11,
Mm.
11:30.
Were there people drinking at night in the coffee shops?
I don't remember seeing a lot. Actually, I think the coffee shops are shut at night.
Ah, okay.
During my time, I remember. I think
Mm.
subsequently, maybe there are others that opened up, but at least the ones I know, because the business the coffee shop for Dong A, for example, at that time in the iconic building, was really until maybe after dinner. Yeah. And I don't think it is a place where people go and drink
Mm.
there, versus that there might be some drinking inside the brothels.
How did growing up along the street affect you as a person? Mm.
Mm,
I
I
mean,
mean, I mentioned earlier
mm,
that whole. I think that for me, growing up as a child and to teenager, I think the difficulty of
mm, mm,
finding my own identity, and perhaps I was always searching what's that identity,
mm,
um, and it took me a long time,
mm,
and not having a sense of identity, a sense of home, um, actually does a lot to kind of mess up a person. I think it's that feeling of rootedness, and especially for me, I think personally, because I felt as if, like, do I belong in Singapore or Hong Kong? Because my father's from Hong Kong. I have a very strong affinity to Hong Kong as well because I lived there, right? But as I was growing up, it's like I don't know what I am,
mm.
and not knowing what you are probably isn't the best place to start. You know, as anybody, it's always good to. It's always important, I think, to know, as a person is anchored somewhere, rooted somewhere. And I think I didn't have the anchor.
Right. You have also written about, how growing up there has toughened you, has made you strong.
Yeah, indeed. I
Mm,
think it has. It's part of a. Yeah, it's a bit of come what may, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what you're being dealt with, and when you look at it on hindsight, yeah, it's past. At any point in time, anything that's very difficult will feel very difficult. But now that I'm, well, a lot older, and having lived through some of quite challenging moments, I mean, even as part of growing up, then you feel that, hey, it will all pass. And
Mm,
it all adds on to what you can be, as a person. It gives you the experience to deal with certain things. Maybe not the exact situation, but the emotions. So to that effect, yes, it has toughened me up.
mm,
It also made me a lot more adventurous, right? To say I I embrace the unknown a lot. No qualms about it, because they all can end up becoming so interesting. If you think of it that way, think of a challenge as being interesting and it's an adventure, and life is an adventure, then yeah, then you will embrace it. So in that sense, it's toughened me up, not so much like, oh, there's so much strength and all, but also in that flexibility, that adaptability to what
mm,
life deals.
mm. How did the idea of writing the book come about?
I've always wanted to put it down,
Mm,
and have something for the family, close friends to read, to know, because I thought the family had a very unusual story, but I didn't really think about
mm,
publishing it.
mm,
And as a child, because I was an only child, I had no outlet. Uh, I had all sorts of weird thoughts, and I was journaling from quite young, maybe about 13, 14. I started journaling,
uh,
really journaling. Before that, it was just, and so I actually have a lot of material, some of which I looked into, and it gave me a sense of what I was feeling. Others, you look back and it's like, gosh, I went through all that, or I thought like that. So it's an interesting journey as well, to see how what I was thinking, and how I've come to what I am today. So 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 that was when I felt, yeah, I wanted to write down. So what I did was I started with all the things that are significant in my head, my memories. And I felt like it's almost like a mind mapping, and I put it all down. And then suddenly, everything, when I could look at them and I sort of consolidated, they look like there are themes in there. And that's how I started writing about it, because I wanted to remember some of these things before I, lose the details. And my best friend read it and said, I think you should seriously think about maybe publishing this. So that
mm,
was when the first seed of publishing it came on. And then I spoke to different people, and then, yeah, and then decided that I was going to publish it.
mm. Was it hard to make that decision to publish?
Uh, I think it was. uh, First, I think I wanted to write it out first, regardless, right? To get it out, and then to publish or not, um, was really needed. I mean, quite a bit of encouragement, and people telling me that it is a unique story, and I'm like,
Mm,
who wants to read something that is not from a famous person, and all? It's just a story. Like, yeah, but the story is interesting. So it was that sort of encouragement, and then speaking to publishers who say, yes, we think there's something in there, made me decide, okay, there is value in sharing it, not just from a self-indulgent perspective. And then, yeah, the rest is history.
mm. That was Ho Fang, right? You talked to Ho Fang, one of the
Yes.
publishers, and we
Yes.
actually have a podcast with Ho Fang a couple of months ago. What did Ho Fang say when you
uh,
approached him?
I He was very, very nice. When I approached him, he looked at it as like, this is a very unique, you know personal journey. I mean, everyone's personal journey is unique, but there is also that whole backdrop of, sort of evolution of the times, quite a bit of the Singapore story that's not told. And I think it was a lot of the untold things about Singapore that made it very interesting. And also, I think it's them who also wanted to keep a lot of my voice in it. I think that made it important,
Mm,
because I think they understood it was quite a personal journey.
mm,
Uh, and I was in between that whole struggle, right? Do I write it? Do I not? And finally, when we decided to publish, I think it was also uh, then me talking to my mother, who has all
uh,
the shame, and deciding, uh, do we publish it as non-fiction, and of course I changed the names. I did what I could, but and how she felt about it, because there's also an option if she was very against it. We could have made this into fiction,
Mm. And
um,
yeah.
and not attached to me, right? I mean, the writer. I mean, it could be based on a true story, whatever. But yeah. So I think she needed to understand why I want to do it, and I explained to her, which is also written in the book because I actually put that in there,
Mm.
explaining to her and telling her why I want to
How
do
how
this.
how did you explain it to her?
I talked about how I felt there are a lot of untold stories and a lot of misconceptions about Keong Saik, about what was happening
Mm.
there. Um, and it just feeds into this bigger narrative that all this um biases, stereotypes about a red light district. But I said there are real human stories in
Mm.
there about how Paw, how they came here, how she was brought up, and all these stories about the perspective of even my mother as a foster daughter. Uh, I think a lot of people saw that the book came from my perspective. It did, but
Uh,
I saw a lot of it also through my mom's perspective. Um,
mm.
and and that one is a more important perspective than mine.
Mm.
Because it's so raw for hers.
Mm.
Yeah.
Were there aspects or parts of the book where she was uncomfortable with?
I think for her, it was more a case of like, if it comes out and if people know about this, please do not, well, she will not take any interviews. Because true enough, everyone wanted to interview her. That she would not appear publicly in anything, and that
Mm.
was it. So it was not parts of it, but it was a case of, good, if you need to do this because you've said this, and okay, I hear you, fine, go ahead. Um, and but it's just that she didn't want to be publicly, well, she didn't want to be personally involved. At the same But it's interesting, right? Asian parents, when finally I realized that she supported the whole thing, was when she, because there were some articles that came out in Chinese, and she reads Chinese
Mm.
in Lianhe as well. And also there was a episode that I anchored in on Xinjie Texie, about Kiang Se, and there was a little interview there about me talking about her, and she heard when she saw that, and then she suddenly, then when they asked me like, oh, how's the sales of the book? You've got her endorsement, because she's like asking about sales now, like, is it popular? What are people thinking and all? And that was very precious.
After the book has been launched, what 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 did people tell you? People who have read the book, what did they say to you about what they felt about it?
I was quite blown away by the response,
Mm.
honestly.
Mm.
It's been an awesome book journey. Never expected this, because when people ask who do you think who are you writing for, I said, first, I don't have a target audience I'm writing for. Who do you think will read it? I said, I don't know, but maybe older ladies, maybe expats who's interested in history, you know.
Yeah.
But in the end, I found out that I had people from very young, male, female, to very old reading it, all sorts of profile, and I became quite interested. Why they're interested? So, why they even want to read it? Some very young people told me that it gave them a sense of uh, um, history, because they are born into Singapore, that's all brand new, and this gives them a sense of heritage. Many have spoken to me about how it resonated with them because of the mother-daughter relationship, the difficulties, and that is actually a very universal. I mean, that was something that was very core for me when I was writing it. It was about a mother and daughter relationship,
Mm-hmm. Mm.
and that came through for quite a lot of people. Interestingly, I had a friend's nephew came and talked to me and said it it made him go and reconcile with his mother. Things like that I didn't expect.
Mm.
And I was like,
Mm.
oh wow. So I was very blown away. Uh, Totally surprised by the response. And well, and I think it taught me that, really, if you are telling an authentic and human story, yeah, people will feel for it. And so for that, I hope it actually, and knowing that has inspired, even amongst those people that told me their actions, and for them to go and talk to their mom, their dads, uh and make them find out more even about history just from that perspective, then it was a very it's very fulfilling for me.
Mm.
Something I totally did not expect.
Did your mom ever, talk about uh, what she feels about the book? Was she aware of the response, you think?
She was somewhat aware
Mm.
from the perspective of knowing that there were many requests for me doing tours talking about my memories of Keong Saik. She knew it was fairly uh well, people responded quite positively to it. And I made it a point because I think shame was such a big thing for her. So when I had certain response, I told them, actually, people told me this and all. Because I wanted her to drop that, to lighten her burden of shame. Which
Mm.
I think, it's very hard. I mean, she had the stigma for like 40 years. I had about 10, 15. Um, and for her, it's a lot more to bear. So whenever I, have a good response and it leads to something, then I'll tell her and I tell her how people are embracing it, that it's not shameful.
Mm.
And today's society will look at it very differently, and especially when people thanked me for saying doing this and whatever, that's what I relate to her. So she knows about the response. And when she asked about sales, it was not really because she needs to know. And she knows, that, I mean, in Singapore, you write a book, you're not going to make a living out of it. But she asked it more from a point that, oh, so people are accepting it. Yeah.
I think it was quite amazing your mom agreed to the book, right? When I was reading the book and you came to that point where you asked her, and I think she took a moment to think about it and then she said, okay, right? I thought that was really amazing for her.
It is
Mm.
amazing. I
Mm.
think what we landed was that she didn't object to it.
Mm.
Okay, I'm not sure whether it was like full support and like go out and spill, but she knew
Mm.
what it would be. I She didn't read the entire book. I actually, because it's in English,
Yeah.
but I actually told her what I talked about,
Oh,
and I translated some chapters and read it to her.
okay.
I was bawling. So it was very, very hard. I have to admit that I didn't manage to finish holding because I was like, it's so
Mm.
emotional when I was trying to
Mm.
do it in Cantonese
Mm.
as I was reading it, right? Because that's what everything happened in Cantonese in my life. I mean, the whole book was me thinking in English about things that happened in Cantonese.
Did you interview your mom when you were writing the book?
I interviewed her for various things,
Okay.
specific areas, but it was also a lot of my interpretation of how it is, of how she responded to things and all.
Your mom is always welcome on the podcast.
I don't think that will
That
uh,
will work.
that will work, or that she will agree to that, because that's one thing she never wanted to be identified.
Yeah. Interestingly, a couple of years ago, I was teaching an oral history class, and I wanted to. I spoke to Project X, right, Vanessa, and she said that there is this fierce mama san that I could maybe talk to, but I don't think that worked out.
Okay,
Yeah, but obviously, from an oral history perspective, those voices are very, very precious, right?
very.
Yeah. Especially, the Malaysians, uh, part of that kind of that transient, that they are transient workers and they don't stay here long. We have lost so many of those, not just the sex workers, of course, but also the domestic workers and construction workers and all that, right? Who've come from other countries and then left. How to find them, right? That's one of the things that we're missing in oral history and memory. Um, any thoughts about the heritage of Keong Saik Road?
I'm quite glad that the
Mm.
heritage of Keong Saik will somehow remain, because the whole place is under conservation.
Mm.
It
Mhm.
will not be destroyed in terms of facade. Well, at least that's something to start with. I thought, compared to many people, I'm very lucky to be able to point to a shop house and say I grew up there. That's such a privilege. Because today, with redevelopment, there's so many things that already has been demolished. So to that effect, I think it's great. Um, what I felt a little bit sort of not quite, it's not quite the council I know. Gentrification, we know that. But if that means if that's the way that the place lives on, then it's okay, because at least it's still there. And then I think it takes people like us. And I've never talked like this before. I mean, in a sense of, from a heritage perspective, but having written the book and seeing all that, suddenly, I mean, sort of opened up a different side of myself, that, wow, what I could talk about Keong Saik is heritage.
Mhm.
So then it needs people like myself to actually bring some of these old memories to life, whether in podcasts like this, whether in writing more books and more stories, or even just sharing the experiences, and sometimes through tours that I lead, and so in that sense, then I think it allows the heritage people to know about stories there. Um, it will come and go businesses. I mean, I think that's the reality today. That
Mm.
it might kill some of that heritage in there, but at least the streets is there. We can still tell the stories.
What do you feel about the present day Keong Saik?
So yeah, I did say
Mm.
so. Today it's a very different community.
Mm.
I think it's no longer really when they talk about community spirit. It's not the one that I used to feel uh, living there. It's a business community. There's a lot of uh, nice food and beverage and all. And in that sense, it's one of the things that would keep people interested in the area. At least if they go there, then it's up to us to be able to sort of insert where there are opportunities, more of the heritage of the area so people can appreciate. Versus if it's completely demolished, you can't even begin to tell some of these stories. So I think it's a double-edged sword. What I see some of it today, it feels quite commercialized.
Mhm.
Uh, but without it, there won't be interest in it. And
Mhm.
and hence it is important, for those of us who are interested in keeping the heritage alive to keep talking about it.
In a sense, we have conserved, the shop houses, and we have repurposed them so that, you know, the shop houses have their lives continue, lah, right? And there are new tenants along the street. But it's not the same uh, road, right? And the one thing that's kind of missing from the road and the stories of the road is, of course, the sex trade that used to be there. So we are not just talking about, we have been talking about our shame, right? But this is also the nation's shame that it has got to deal with. I think that um, to fully fleshed out that heritage, that very rich heritage, you cannot run away from the sex trade, right? That is the heritage of the street, right? There are different streets in Chinatown, and they have all their different specializations, and shops and residents and all that. And for Keong Saik, as well as for Teck Lim and Jiak Chuan, that was the identity of that trade. And we need to embrace that heritage and not see it as something shameful. I think that is what that Singapore needs to do on a national level. You know, what do you think of that?
I think today it's, I don't know. I mean, ever since I've talked about it,
Mm.
I felt in a way it gave it a bit more prominence. I mean, the whole sex trade, that area and all, because there are many people who say, "Oh, I didn't even know about this." So it has actually opened up that conversation. And we all can't deny the things that have happened in the past.
Mm.
So when we are able to have platforms to spark those conversations, it's great because it is what in that whole nation building is part of this that has built us to what we are today. And sex is the oldest trade, oldest profession. It will still exist in various forms,
Mm.
and will continue to exist. But it's just that it is also, I think, more important, rather than thinking of it as just a sex trade, but it's also about how people at that time, at a certain time where they had no means um, to make a living,
Mm.
that resilient spirit that they have to, do what it took to make a living. And really, maybe instead of just saying that we need to talk about the sex trade so that the past is not denied, it's also to actually talk about it so that people don't have to feel shameful. And I think that that's what makes it important, because we all come from somewhere, and that there are reasons why things happen in such a way. Um, so really, the ability to, today, even be able to sit here and talk about it, um, it gives me hope that we will, continue to be able to tell these humane humanity stories. That's so important, I think, for our soul.
Hmm.
Beyond commercialization, beyond profiting from the businesses and all. But that's essential. I mean, that there is going to be a part that will continue, that will help to, society to thrive.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. I mean, the values that we want to inculcate, right, to the younger generation, resilience is one of our favorite terms, isn't it? Perfect for the
Yeah,
social
indeed.
studies syllabus.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I think it also, how it's always been. I mean, like it or not, today I think there's still a lot of that whole patriarchal, sort of format, right?
mm, mm.
Because there are thousands and hundreds and thousands of years of that sort of notion. But just look at how, I mean, my story, where there's so many women that actually did so much for themselves, for others, for their families. Uh, and it was just all these women that they're so strong. So there's actually a lot of that there already back then, but we don't recognize it. And I think today we're in that space where, every time we talk about equality, it's actually, maybe it's not just equality and expecting everyone to be equal, but to give recognition that actually, even where the men are not there, the women
Mm,
rise up to the occasion as well,
mm.
and did what they had to do. Yeah, and in my case, I think the father was there. It's just that, because this so much of our lives were in Singapore that I talked about it so much. It wasn't like he was a bad father at all. I think a lot of people actually ask me that, but I just want to say that, at least there's a balance. And because it's always been talking so much about patriarchal society, that I felt this skew towards talking about the women then actually hopefully brings it to a bit of a balance.
It sure does. Have you been leading tours back there?
No, not
Are you one
recent.
of a tour guide? Do you have this tour guide mentality?
Um, no, not no, because well, first, I'm not licensed to be a tour guide, but
Oh,
I think when I was taking people around, it was sharing memories of
yeah.
the street, and really talking about things that was uh what it meant to me. I think it was from that perspective, and it was at a stage where we were introducing the book. And I was giving some talks as well. But because I'm not a tour guide, I don't do it, and actually, I don't have the capacity, the bandwidth to do, constantly do tours.
Yeah.
So actually, what instead, I was very very lucky that I was approached to actually work on an audio tour, scripted and narrated by me, which is now available on Clue. So that way, people can experience it. It's really based on, the stories that I've told in Keong Saik, and then taking people around about a 40 minutes tour around Keong Saik that they can do as a self-guided tour.
So where do they get the equipment and all that?
So it's actually just a link
Right.
on Klook. They can sign up for it there. I mean, they can purchase the tour, and then they can just start. The starting point is at the Indian temple, and then the narration will take them through the whole walk. They can stop in the middle of it, and sort of experience other parts of Khaonsak, and then they can carry on. So that's just been launched in June this year.
Oh, okay, wonderful. Could you send me the link?
Yes, I will do that. And then,
Right, right.
yeah, you can introduce more people. So some people have already been going to it, and response has been good. But I think what
Oh,
we're also trying to do is that, for especially those people who, have gone through it, to share, their views on it as well. Yeah. But I'll send you the information.
yeah, and I'll put the link in the descriptions.
Yeah.
Well, it's almost been 2 hours.
Ooh, has it been?
Did we leave out anything?
I don't know. You tell me. I think we've talked about it in a very broad way, many things. Yeah. But
Yeah.
thank you for your interest and for
No,
asking
no,
me
thank
to
you.
talk about this.
Thank you, thank you. I think we've only really scratched the surface. I mean, only the things that I'm interested in, lah. And we've talked about the memory, the heritage, but a lot of the emotion that is in the relationship between you and your mother, So for the readers and for the viewers, right, please go and read the book. The book really captures the heart of their relationship much better than what I could have done on the podcast. So thank you very much, Charmaine. Really happy to have you with us to shed some light on this little street in Chinatown.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank
Yeah,
you
but
very much, Charmaine.
yeah,
And
thank you very
do
much.
try to find the photos, the old
Yes, I
photos.
will. Yeah, I will. Okay,
Talk
all
soon
right. You take
again.
care. All right, bye bye.
Bye.